In this video, I want to keep up the trend of statistically analysing the teams in question. Unfortunately for Chelsea, a lot of those questions revolve around their injured players, specifically Kerr and Bright. And we also look at what makes Hacken click. Basically, it's their deep build-up and their creative spark. With that, let's get into it. Okay, so top to bottom, we'll start with goal involvements, that being goals and assists. She has 18% of the team's goal involvements from one person supposedly playing at 80%, suggesting it could have been even more, especially as she'd grown into the season. With respect to conversion rate of XG, by that I'm getting at the fact that she has an XG for her WSL and UEFA Women's Champions League games combined of 5.94 versus 9 goals, whereas the team has an XG of 29.4 and only 31 goals. So we can see just how efficient she is. And we see that also in her conversion rate, the conversion rate of her shot. Of course, with any of these stats, we lack context. So of course, the team typically is creating chances for her, where she is typically in the best position to score compared to her teammates. Regardless, she's scoring 1/5 of her shot, whereas the team is only scoring 1/8. I did have a look at conversion rate by XG for the team, and the standouts were Lauren James, Cuthbert, and Beaver Jones, although Beaver Jones has very few minutes, so it's probably an anomaly. So even if you were to put, let's say, one of those three into a centre forward position, my question then would be, is the team actually set up to build chances for them? And then what do you lose by moving them into the centre forward position? And then can they actually even do the other work beyond just scoring? So we're thinking of the runs that Sam makes in behind to stretch the play, the fact that she's hugely aerially dominant and the focal point for throw-ins, corner kicks, goal kicks, and that she drags so much attention away from others just by being as dangerous as she is. Anyway, moving on, I also was curious as to how vulnerable Chelsea were to counterattacks, and I had to go and look at the data. And so whilst I felt that Chelsea were quite vulnerable, quite open in the match, the data suggests that this was actually one of the games where they performed better when you compare the number of carries per 90 in this match versus their average. Although when you look in context against Barcelona Femení and Bayern München, then you get worried again. Although looking at Bayern München, the max carry distance for them is a bit ridiculous, and also just the average carry distance per 90 for Bayern Munich does seem ridiculous until you have the context of their pressing shape being the 4-2-3-1. Please have a look at the Ajax versus Bayern Munich video on the channel. And then lastly, just having a look at the XG against. Chelsea's overall XG against per 90 is terrifying. Of course, they miss Millie Bright hugely, but against their peers, this difference is hugely worrying. Starting in the 27th minute, just after Hacken have equalised, with Cuthbert getting some medical attention, with Chelsea building up in this 2-3 deep, with Ingle in the number 6 versus what I saw as a 5-2-1-2 or a 5-2-3 pressing shape, with Kafaji being expected to track Ingle, with intention being that Chelsea will avoid the centre and instead they'd play out towards the fullback. And then given the fact that Anvegard and Larisse will match up with the centre-back and the wing-backs will jump towards their fullback, Hacken expected to be able to press Chelsea towards the touchline. Of course, the wing-backs pressing towards Chelsea's fullbacks happened only near side, and so we can see that 5-2 to a little bit better here, with the forwards Hacken matching up against their centre-back, as well as also Bar and Kosola dropping back into that back five after having pushed out towards Chelsea's fullback, at least near side. This pass between the lines into Kerr dropping, just as with the other forwards, Wrighton and Canary dropping, was tracked to prevent Kerr or the other forwards from being able to turn. Note Cuthbert and James, with Cuthbert the more likely to drop from her position between the lines to help Ingle and the defence in build-up. James coming narrow like this was something she did even later in the game when Emma Hayes pushed her into a left wing position out of possession, with Neum Charles providing the width instead. Here we get to see some of what I mentioned, with Hacken basically matching up such that they have all of Chelsea's short options marked, eventually forcing Buchanan into trying to switch play, which unfortunately her and Carter were expected to do quite a lot, but they didn't necessarily do with enough urgency. Moving on, when Chelsea passed back to Musovic, she was pressed intensely. Regardless, she tried to keep her head and pass over or around the Hacken press. On this occasion, Hacken are able to contest possession, get the ball under control. Quick note on Bar, who appeared to be the focus for flick-ons or through balls from Hacken's long goal kicks. And then Kafaji, I don't want to do her a disservice, but essentially she's Hacken's Lauren James. She's of course not ridiculously OP, but she's extremely agile, able to dribble through pressure, positionally very clever, constantly positioning in difficult to defend positions, and creative with her passing. Moving on from Chelsea's deep build-up and Hacken's pressing to the 30th minute with Chelsea in midfield possession against what was a 5-3-1-1 or a 5-4-1. Chelsea were playing essentially what looked like a 2-1 on paper, with Ingol sitting ahead of the centre-backs and the Chelsea full-backs heavily involved in the attack, given Hacken back five. And then you had number 8s of Lauren James and Cuthbert between the line in the half spaces to try and help the full-back and wide forward to create crossing or attacking opportunities. I just want to emphasise Liam Charles and Lawrence's positions. Of course, the benefit of having Lauren James as your left-hand-sided number 8 is that she's quite adept at getting crosses towards the back post for the likes of Cannerid or Kerr to contest. Speaking of the Chelsea forwards, to facilitate Chelsea's fullbacks getting into high position, they typically narrowed so that there was a lot more space in those wide areas. Given Hacken, again, having a 3 in midfield and a back 5, the previous attack breaks down and Falk doesn't rest. She quickly distributes, looking to frustrate Chelsea's press, allowing Hacken to create an attack in transition. I feel the need to emphasise that Hacken don't mind taking short goal kicks against Chelsea's press and actually invite it at times. But this is one of those occasions where Hacken are able to play through a disorganised Chelsea, taking advantage of that 2-1, where, as I said, you have your fullbacks both really high up the pitch. And so there are just huge spaces for the Hacken forward to try and exploit, including Barr, who, at least out of possession, is left wing back. But here we can see her busting a gut to try and join in the attack. The frequency and the danger of these attacks throughout the game were cause for concern, specifically for Chelsea's Champions League hope. A bit of miscommunication and the Hacken counter-attack breaks down. But I just wanted to point out Kosola's positioning here, looking to try and help initially support the counter-attack, but then start somewhat of a counter-press. But her roles vary from providing width during midfield possession or inverting into more of a right-sided centre midfielder in a 3-3-1-3. And so with Hacken winning back possession, we briefly get to see this 4-2-1-3 or 4-2-2-2 by Hacken. More typically, I'd expect just Kafoji to be between the lines, but Anvegard also did like to drop into that space too. I mentioned that 3-3-1-3 because Kosola could instead come into this central space as well. This was against Chelsea out of possession in either a 4-4-2 or more of a 4-1-3-2 with Ingol in behind the rest of her midfield. Unfortunately, Kosola makes an unforced error. Chelsea get back in possession and they'll set back up into that 2-1. And so whilst Hacken's 5-3-1-1 does allow Chelsea to progress relatively uncontested in this wide space, because Hacken have a wing back, a wide centre back and a midfielder come across, it can make it a lot more difficult for Chelsea to be able to make those underlapping runs to exploit the space between the wing back and centre back. And with Hacken doubling up, whenever Chelsea got into these advanced areas either side of the Hacken penalty area, Chelsea really struggled to get past that doubling up and whip in meaningfully dangerous crosses, instead ending up being forced to retreat into the covering number 8 and then into the centre-backs to try and rotate possession, which is exactly what we see here in that 2-1 shape with our advanced fullbacks, our number 8s, and Hacken in that 5-3-1-1. To try and disrupt Hacken's shape, Chelsea's number 8s could drop to try and draw out one of those Hacken defenders, creating space for others to try and exploit, which we see here with Cuthbert dropping to help Buchanan and Carter, whose tentative play was understandable given all the space I've mentioned left by the fullback, which meant that Chelsea's rest defence was extremely fragile and reliant on their pace to prevent Hacken opportunities. Unfortunately, on this occasion, Cuthbert's pass into that vacated space doesn't lead to the link-up she was hoping for, and Hacken get back into possession. And before moving on, I did want to point out a slight difference between how Cuthbert played and Lauren James, just in the fact that Lauren James was essentially given carte blanche to shoot on some, and so on so many occasions from distance, Lauren, instead of crossing or looking to link with others, attempted to pep the Hacken goal. Okay, and then moving to the 82nd minute, we still have our 4-1-3-2 press by Chelsea against Hacken in this 4-2-1-3 or 4-2-2-2 with Kafaji still looking to create from between the lines. Although I must mention, in the second half, given how good Hacken had been at passing through Chelsea's press, Chelsea sought to set trap where they would sit off initially and let Hacken build their way maybe 10-15 yards away from the goal, get it out into a wide space And then as soon as they pass, Chelsea pounds. On this occasion, Chelsea are able to win back possession, but very quickly gift back to Hacken after a misplaced pass into Fish dropping, carrying out a similar role as Kerr with those wall passes. And so we get to see that 4-2-2-2 or 2-4-2-2 that I mentioned earlier in this example. But on this occasion, Hacken are able to get the ball over that initial wave of Chelsea pressure and into Kafaji between the lines, looking to exploit the space either side of Chelsea CDM, who is now Nusken rather than Ingle, and then from there create some momentum in Hacken's favour, although Noom Charles here has tracked the forward very diligent. Regardless, Hacken are able to maintain possession in that 2-4 shape rather than the 3-3-1-3 from earlier, and we have this synchronised movement by our centre midfielder. And so with both Kermark and Sorensen pulling heavily towards this right hand side, they're creating space far side for guess who? Kafaji at Chelsea. 4-4-2 narrowed to the near side. Whilst I say it changed from the 3-3-1-3, it still was a back three. So here we get to see that a little bit better with them as they've progressed into Chelsea's half. Now we get more of like a 3-2-5. So we still have our centre midfielder sitting ahead of the centre back. Kafaji is looking to try and get back into that space between the lines and create, with Anvegard still helping Kafaji between the lines. But at this point now, Sandberg is leading the line, and she was making a lot of runs into wide spaces to try help creating crossing opportunities. And with that, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, consider sharing on social media, subscribing, and I'd really love to know what you think of Chelsea's hope, especially given Sam Kerr's injury. My well wishes go out to her.